From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. First, the headline. Syrian townfolk shocked, ISIS leader was neighbor. Top Boris Johnson aide resigns over conspiracy theory row. Israel approved construction of 3,365 settlement units since start of 2022. At least 7 Pakistani soldiers, 13 militants killed in southwest Pakistan. The rise of Muslim young adult fiction, tales of high school, hijab, and halal marshmallows. And our top story tonight. More details are emerging in the killing of ISIS leader Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurayshi. Neighbors say they had no idea that he was the head of the terrorist group. When U.S. forces flew over the Syrian town of Atme, where the ISIS leader was hiding, resident Mahmoud Shahade mistook the sound of helicopters for a storm. In the early morning hours Thursday, several helicopters had surrounded a neighboring house in the Syrian town in northwestern Idlib region. Loudspeakers blared messages to the home's occupants to surrender. Shortly after, al-Qurayshi blew himself up, killing himself and his family. Residents heard shooting and fire from gunships for about 2 hours before special forces stormed al-Qurayshi's house. U.S. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said Thursday Russia could stage a fake attack by Ukrainian forces on Russian territory to justify its actions near Ukraine's border. Longtime Associated Press reporter Matt Lee grilled a State Department spokesperson over the U.S. government's refusal to provide direct evidence. He invoked the government's false propaganda that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. This led to the 2003 U.S. invasion of the country. Lee said he has every reason to be skeptical of U.S. government's assertions. The New York Times reported earlier that the U.S. obtained intelligence, a fake video that the Russians were planning to bolster their disinformation campaigns. Munira Mirza, one of Prime Minister Boris Johnson's top advisors, quit Thursday amid a row over the conspiracy theory that the British leader spread. Mirza stepped down after Johnson did not apologize over the use of a discredited claim that Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer failed to prosecute pedophile Jimmy Savile. She announced her resignation in an open letter published in the right-wing Spectator magazine, which Johnson used to edit. Mirza wrote that there was no fair or reasonable basis for the assertion that Starmer was personally responsible for allowing Savile to escape justice. After Savile's death in 2011, it was uncovered that he was believed to have sexually abused hundreds of children, including at children's hospitals. The Israeli municipality in Jerusalem has approved the construction of over 3,000 settlement units east of the city since the start of 2022, Anadolu agency reports. The 4 settlements are planned on the Palestinian town of Isawiya. This includes construction of 1,500 housing units, 200 protected rooms, and 500 student bedrooms on 150 acres, the Jerusalem municipality said. These settlements are illegal under international law. At least 13 militants and 7 soldiers were killed in overnight clashes in southwestern Pakistan, the army said Thursday. The Pakistani military said that militants tried to storm security camps in Panjgur and Naushiki areas in Balochistan province Wednesday night. However, the troops foiled their attempts. The militants were later killed in clearance operations. Intelligence agencies have intercepted communications between the extremists and their handlers in Afghanistan and India, the statement added. Balochistan is Pakistan's largest mineral-rich province. It is a security route for the $64 billion China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, part of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative. Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, who is in China for the opening ceremony of the genocidal Beijing 2022 Olympics, paid tribute to the soldiers. Weary of the civil war at home, a Yemeni family attempted to cross into Europe through Greece to a tragic end. A family member was lost at sea after Greek Coastal Guard units threw him into the Mediterranean Sea. The family, husband and wife Mahdi Kalla and Fatima Mahmoud, along with their cousin Mujahid Abdul Jawad, left Yemen in December. On January 30th, they boarded a rubber boat carrying a group of Yemeni asylum seekers from Turkey's province of Izmir. They reached Greece's Chios Island but were captured by Greek coastal guards. Kalla, Abdul Jawad, and another Yemeni named Mahad Adineri were thrown into Turkish territorial waters. Kalla and Adineri, swimming against strong currents in freezing water, made it to the Isle of Garada of Mughla, Turkey, but Abdul Jawad was missing. Turkish Coastal Guard units gave the survivors first aid and launched a search for Abdul Jawad, whose body was later found off Izmir's Sesmi district. Turkey and human rights groups have condemned Greece's illegal practice of pushing back asylum seekers. Britain's largest Muslim group on Thursday called on everyone involved in the Beijing Winter Olympics to raise awareness about the plight of the Uyghur people. About 3 million Uyghurs have been forcefully detained at internment camps and subjected to torture, rape, mass sterilization, and forced labor, the Muslim Council of Britain said. They also have been forced to renounce their Muslim beliefs and practices, the group added. Many athletes have refused to take part in the Olympics to show solidarity with Uyghurs. Council President Zara Mohammed described the international multi-sport event as genocide games. She called China's documented treatment of Uyghur Muslims in occupied East Turkestan crimes against humanity. Rights groups, including Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, accused China of oppressing 12 million Uyghurs who are mostly Muslim. Former Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke, who killed 17-year-old LAQUAN McDonald in 2014 with 16 shots, was released from prison on Thursday. Van Dyke served barely more than 3 years of a nearly 7-year prison sentence for killing the black teenager. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's office confirmed the release to CNN on Thursday. Van Dyke's early release is tied to good behavior in prison. During his 2019 sentencing hearing, Van Dyke read a statement saying, "October 20, 2014 will always be the worst day of my life." He was convicted of second-degree murder and 16 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm. The Reverend Marvin Hunter, McDonald's great-uncle, told CNN Van Dyke's prosecution and conviction delivered justice. Bringing more news stories after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Friends, our world is pulling together like never before. We're making huge sacrifices to keep one another safe. Scientists are working non-stop to develop COVID-19 vaccines and treatments. A vaccine will get our economies moving. It will tell our loved ones we're safe again. But we have challenges we must address. Right now, huge pharmaceutical companies are keeping the vaccine research a secret. They're deciding how many vaccines get made, how much to charge for them, and who gets vaccinated. This will no doubt leave billions of people behind. Pharma companies are putting profit, not people, first. Yet, billions of dollars of taxpayers' money is funding their work. We cannot let the CEOs of a handful of pharmaceutical companies decide our future. We need a vaccine that everyone can have free of charge, no matter where you live or whether you're rich or you're poor. We need companies to share all their research so we can make enough safe vaccines for everyone. We need a vaccine owned by all of us. To end this COVID-19 pandemic, we need to pull together once more.
US officials and international human rights groups are concerned for the safety of Olympic athletes in China. A Chinese government official warned about punishment for competitors if they spoke out on political issues at the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing. Yang Shu, Deputy Director of International Relations for the Beijing Organizing Committee, said any speech against the Olympic spirit or Chinese laws would be subject to certain punishment. Shu did not ease concerns at a press conference Tuesday when saying the International Olympic Committee Rule 50 does include some speech regulations. Athletes cannot freely express their opinions at medal ceremonies, but can in press conferences or interviews, Shu said. Israel's highest-ranking Arab Muslim police officer has resigned, according to a statement Monday. The resignation comes a week after a video emerged showing the officer tripping over the body of a stabbing victim when leaving the scene of a crime in 2020. Major General Jamal Hakhroush, 64, was appointed Deputy Commissioner in 2016 to lead outreach efforts towards Israel's Arab minority. Hakhroush was visiting a factory office in his hometown of Kafar Kanna on business when a fight broke out between two men. One man stabbed the other in the chest. Security camera footage shows Hakhroush walking down a stairwell and tripping over the stabbed man before heading out the door. He ignored the assailant who was barricaded in another room and did not provide first aid to the victim, Haaretz reported. Public Security Minister Omar Barlev thanks Hakhroush for his 44 years of service and said his resignation was appropriate. Police continue to investigate the incident. Like most teen novels, Muslim young adult fiction is bursting with hormones, love interests, family drama, friendships, and fallouts typical of high school life. The only difference is the main characters are all Muslim, as are the authors of their stories. Muslim young adult fiction was once relegated to relatively unknown indie printing presses. Now these books are being published by mainstream English language publishing houses. Popular writers include Uzma Jalaluddin, whose best-selling novel Hena Khan Carries On is being adapted for the big screen by Amazon Studios and Mindy Kaling. Another is Layla Sabrine, whose debut book You Truly Assumed will be released February 8th by HarperCollins. The authors leading this literary niche are pioneering a new movement and exploring wider issues in Muslim communities, such as racism, gender roles, and balancing faith and modernity. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment on gun violence. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September. I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table. I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. To discuss President Biden's strategy to fight gun violence, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Hena. President Biden and the Secretary of Justice together visited New York and to deal and discuss strategies to fight gun violence. New York mayor, who used to be a NYPD, New York's police department's captain, he joined them and he agreed with the president. Actually, he said, Mr. President, Eric Adams is reporting for duty and ready to serve. So what can he do? Can we stop the gun violence? It's a part of Americana. Will it be possible? And what are the things he could do? We have someone who studies these things, a professor of law and the director of criminal juvenile justice and racial justice clinical program at the University of San Francisco School of Law, Professor LARA BAZELON. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us what these people can do. I mean, it seems that the mayor and the Secretary of Justice, as well as President, are together on this.
Well, they have their work cut out for them for a number of reasons. As you know, gun rights have expanded in the United States with this conservative majority in the Supreme Court, and they seem poised to strike down some laws that had allowed states like New York to have tighter gun restrictions. What they're saying they're going to do, the Biden-Adams partnership, is crack down on something called the Iron Corridor. And that is actually the I-95 freeway, which runs north to south and is basically accused of being a conduit for illegal firearms coming into states like New York and Massachusetts from states in the South, which have more permissive regulations, or some would say lack of regulations around firearms. So that's one thing they're trying to do. Another thing they're trying to do is pump more money into police departments, state, local, and federal. But I think critics on the left would say that the police already have plenty of money. And as you point out, this gun problem seems to be getting worse, not better. And in part, that's because in the United States, there are more guns than there are people. And the laws around gun ownership are getting more permissive rather than more restrictive.
Well, that was interesting to note that President Biden wanted to throw $500 million at it. Was the absence of money the real problem, which he's trying to fix by providing more money?
I don't think so, honestly. I think that the idea that throwing money at this problem is going to fix it is really not very well grounded, because as you probably are aware, law enforcement in the United States is not lacking for money. The problem isn't that their budgets aren't full. The problem is that the laws that exist allow most Americans to own a firearm, in fact, multiple firearms. And because of the kind of commerce of guns and the number of guns, it's also very easy for the people who aren't supposed to have them to get their hands on them.
What President Biden, I mean, he has been president for a year now. What has he done in reference to gun violence, which he will plan to do now?
Well, he has talked a lot about how it's a major problem. Of course, President Obama did the same, and numerous presidents before them have. And really, basically, as far as I can tell, it is a lot of talk. I'm not really sure that he's been able to put some kind of a federal program in place or really encourage super innovative thinking by states and localities around this issue. I mean, one area where there has been progress is the so-called ghost guns, and trying to crack down on the people who manufacture them and prosecute those people, because of course those guns are not legal. But I think that there's just a greater problem, which is partly about our laws and partly about our culture.
Would you think the culture is dictating laws here?
I'm sorry?
Do you think culture is dictating laws?
I think it's a chicken and the egg kind of issue. I think Americans have always loved their guns. I think until recently, there wasn't a lot of case law interpreting the so-called right to bear arms in the Second Amendment. We have a court now, the Supreme Court, that is inclined to interpret that very, very permissively, and really to discourage states from trying to impose restrictions like requiring people to have a license or requiring people to not carry guns within a certain number of feet of a certain kind of place. You know, we have states where people are bringing guns to church, they're bringing guns to school, they're bringing guns to the supermarket, they're bringing guns to bars. And in a lot of states, that's perfectly legal. And I don't see our government being able to really do anything about that.
President is also calling on a ban on assault weapons. Is that a statement, or is that a strategy which has not been talked about before?
Well, as your listeners may or may not know, we did have a federal ban on assault weapons, and that was put into place in the 1990s. And then it sunsetted that provision, and Congress didn't take that legislation up again. And so we're now in a situation where there really isn't any federal legislation around this question. I think many people would welcome a ban on assault weapons, since it's not really clear to me what a regular citizen needs out of an assault weapon. And of course, they're extremely lethal and dangerous. But I think that's really about getting the votes in Congress to revive that bill. And given the power of the gun lobby and given the sentiment in this country toward gun ownership, I'm not sure that there's the political will or the votes to do that.
Well, there were votes and political votes and all that during the Obama administration. He had the House and the Senate and himself as president. They didn't do much in terms of gun laws. So what is the problem with us?
The basic problem is a resistance to changing the law. And it's really interesting because President Obama's best chance to tighten gun restrictions came after the horrible massacre at Sandy Hook, where 20 children were murdered by a deranged gunmen. And that was really this big opportunity to at least have background checks be beefed up, to have certain kinds of gun manufacturers be subject to stricter regulations. And actually, you know, it's interesting that legislation polled very, very well. I mean, it was like at a 90% approval rate by the public. And yet, because the gun lobby was so powerful, and I think they have a hold over many of our elected officials, that bill never made it to the floor, much less passed into law. And I feel like if we can't do anything in the wake of our own children being massacred in kindergarten and first grade, I'm not really sure what the prognosis is other than grim.
You know, you as a professor study that and you teach that. So can you and your students come up with some solution to this nightmare?
That's a great question. I feel like one of the things that keeps me engaged with my job is hoping for a better future for my students. I'm not sure we've handed them such a great situation in so many ways. And yet I feel that my students are idealistic and optimistic and energetic. And also, I mean, in California, where I live and I work and I teach, we do have relatively restrictive gun laws. Now we'll see what the Supreme Court does with a case that's pending in New York that would have a huge impact on us. But I do think sometimes when I feel despairing, I look at my state, and you can say what you want about some problems with California, wildfires, droughts, a potential earthquake at any moment, but we are trying our best to do innovative things when it comes to things like criminal justice reform. And so when I think about my students going out into the world and going to states like mine and other states and spreading those ideas, it does make me feel a little more hopeful.
Now, Eric Adams, mayor of New York, where President and the Secretary of Justice joined him, he clearly wanted more policing when he was running for office, unlike other candidates, and it's not considered quote unquote progressive. Do you think his background being a police officer, he can make anything to make New York City safer with less guns and less violence?
I think he has a real mandate from the voters, and he's a really interesting combination of qualities in that, you know, he's a former NYPD officer, but he's also somebody who was racially profiled and actually beaten by the police. He strongly identifies as a Democrat, but he doesn't want to get pulled too far to the left. And I feel like given all of those interesting mixture of qualities and attributes, he has kind of a bully pulpit right now, especially in the honeymoon phase of taking over as mayor of New York. And so it may be that he's able to do some things both at the state level and advocating nationwide as the mayor of one of the most prominent cities. I feel like the jury is out, though, because, you know, he's so new to this office. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, if a mayor of New York can do a few things, what about the executive orders presidents have? Are there some executive orders which could be crafted in a way that, there's more peace on our streets?
That's an interesting question. You're absolutely right that presidents in our country can exercise authority through executive orders. What's tricky here is that, of course, they're checked. They're checked by the Constitution. And right now we have a court that is interpreting the Second Amendment, specifically around the right to bear arms and own guns, in a way that were President Biden to issue an executive order, he'd have to be careful not to run afoul of.
Well, thank you so much, Professor BAZELON, for your time and for your insight.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.